The massive ship appeared out of nowhere. One moment, the space around Coalition Station 6 was empty. The next, a warship larger than anything the Coalition had ever seen hung against the starfield like a steel mountain. Its dark hull absorbed the light from the nearby sun, making it look like a hole in space. Warning lights flashed across every control panel in the station's command center. Officer Tom's hands shook as he stared at the readings. The ship was 12 kilometers long, impossible by Coalition standards. Even their largest vessels barely reached 2 kilometers. The strange ship's power readings were off the charts, and its hull was made of materials their scanners couldn't identify. "Alert the Defense Council," Tom said to his assistant, "and get me Ambassador Reed." His voice cracked despite his best efforts to sound calm. In his 20 years of service, he had never seen anything like this. The Coalition's 5 member species had ruled this sector of space for 300 years. They thought they knew everything about everyone in their part of the galaxy. This ship proved them wrong. Ambassador Reed arrived at the command center 5 minutes later, his crystalline form catching the light from the monitors. "What do we know?" he asked, his translator converting his harmonic tones into standard speech. "Nothing, sir. It just appeared. No warp signature, no distortion field. It's just there." Tom pointed to the main screen. "And it's bigger than." A new alert cut him off. The strange ship was broadcasting on all frequencies. A deep voice filled the command center, speaking in perfect Coalition standard. "Coalition Station 6, this is Captain James of the Thunder's Edge. We come in peace and seek diplomatic contact. Please respond." The voice sounded calm, almost friendly, but Tom couldn't shake the feeling of danger. The ship's weapon ports were clearly visible. There were hundreds of them, each one larger than Coalition Station 6's main gun. Ambassador Reed moved to respond, but the station's automated defense systems had other ideas. Programmed to defend against any military vessel larger than Coalition specifications, they detected the Thunder's Edge as a threat. Before anyone could override them, the station's guns locked onto the massive ship and opened fire. "No," Reed shouted, but it was too late. 20 high-powered plasma beams struck the Thunder's Edge dead center. The entire command center held their breath, expecting to see at least some damage. Instead, the massive ship just sat there. Where the plasma beams hit, faint ripples of blue energy spread out like waves in a pond, then faded. The ship's shields had absorbed Coalition's strongest weapons without even flickering. "Coalition Station 6, Captain James's voice came again, now tinged with concern. "We register weapons fire from your position. Please be advised that any hostile action will trigger automated defense protocols. We wish to avoid this. Our mission is peaceful." But more Coalition defense platforms were activating. Automated systems across the sector detected the threat and began powering up. Within minutes, every weapon in range would target the Thunder's Edge. Tom watched in horror as his display showed more ships appearing. 3, then 7, then 12 human warships blinked into existence around the sector. Each one was as massive as the Thunder's Edge. They took up position in a defensive formation, their weapons remaining powered down but their shields glowing with barely contained energy. Ambassador Reed finally managed to reach the emergency override. The defense platforms powered down, their guns falling silent. "This is Ambassador Reed of the Stellar Coalition," he broadcast. "We apologize for the automated response. Our defense systems were not programmed for ships of your size. Please accept our sincere regrets." There was a pause that felt like forever. Tom could hear his own heart beating. The human ships hung in space like dark stars, waiting. "Apology accepted, Ambassador," Captain James replied at last. "We understand the reaction. Humanity has that effect sometimes. Perhaps we should discuss updating your defense protocols after we complete our diplomatic mission, of course." The hint of humor in the captain's voice only made Tom more nervous. These humans, whoever they were, had just proved they could shrug off the Coalition's strongest weapons. And there were more of them arriving every minute, their ships making the Coalition's finest vessels look like toys in comparison. The age of Coalition dominance had just ended. The only question was, what would these humans do next? The next few hours on Coalition Station 6 were pure chaos. Every communication channel was flooded with panic messages from the 5-member worlds. The human ships hadn't moved, but their presence alone was enough to throw the entire Coalition into confusion. Ambassador Reed stood in the emergency council chamber, facing angry representatives on multiple screens. His crystalline form reflected the red emergency lights, making him look like he was on fire. "How did we not know about them?" asked the trade minister, his scaled face dark with worry. A species capable of building ships that size couldn't have stayed hidden. "But they did," said Military Commander Pat, joining the conversation. She pulled up an image of the Thunder's Edge on the main screen. "And that's not even the most interesting part. Look at this." The image zoomed in on markings along the ship's hull. Numbers were visible. 1857. "That's a production number," Pat explained. "Meaning this isn't their first ship. It's their 1857th of this class alone." The chamber went silent. The implications were staggering. If this was just one class of ship, and they had built over 1,000 of them. A new voice cut through the silence. "Ambassador Reed." It was Captain James from the Thunder's Edge. "We're receiving some concerning energy readings from your outer colonies. Several of your military bases appear to be powering up their long-range weapons. I want to avoid any further misunderstandings." Reed looked at Pat, who nodded grimly. "Outer colonies are panicking. They're preparing for war." "Captain James," Reed replied quickly, "please understand. We've never encountered a species with your level of technology. Some of our people are frightened." "Understandable," James said. His voice remained calm, almost friendly. "That's why we came with a diplomatic mission rather than a full fleet. These ships you see, they're mostly cargo vessels, despite their appearance. We carry medicine, scientific equipment, terraform engines, tools for peace, not war." The council chamber erupted in disbelief. Military Commander Pat studied her readings again. "He's telling the truth," she said, sounding surprised. "I'm detecting massive medical bays, hydroponic sections, and what looks like entire forest habitats inside those ships. They're like flying cities." "But the weapons," the trade minister protested. "We all saw them." "Every city needs walls," James replied, having heard the exchange. "Every hospital ship needs protection. But look closer at our weapon systems. They're defensive, designed to protect, not destroy." Reed noticed something else on the scans. "The ship's hull," he said slowly. "It's the same material we found in the ancient ruins on Colony World 3. The ones we could never identify." "Ah," James said, and for the first time he sounded slightly embarrassed. "Yes, about that. We've been meaning to talk to you about those ruins. They're actually old human outposts. We used to be more involved in galactic affairs a long time ago." The implications hit Reed like a physical blow. The ruins were over 10,000 years old. If these humans built them, why come back now? Reed asked. "Because you're ready," James replied. "Your coalition has achieved something rare. 5 species working together in genuine peace. We've been watching, waiting for the right moment. We wanted to open diplomatic relations properly, as equals." "Equals?" Pat couldn't help but laugh. "Your ships could probably destroy our entire fleet without trying." "Power isn't just about destruction," James said. "Look at your scans again. Focus on the medical bays, the scientific labs, the agricultural sections. We build big ships because we believe in being prepared, not just for war, but for any crisis, famine, plague, natural disasters. Our ships are large because they carry hope, not just weapons." Reed felt the mood in the chamber shifting. Fear was giving way to curiosity. The trade minister was already talking about potential exchanges of technology. Military Commander Pat was studying the ship's defensive systems with professional interest rather than dread. "Perhaps," Reed said carefully, "we should discuss this face to face. Would you accept an invitation to board our station, Captain James?" "I'd be honored," James replied. "Though I should warn you, human handshakes can be quite firm." For the first time since the massive ships appeared, Reed felt himself relax. Maybe this wasn't the end of the coalition after all. Maybe it was just the beginning of something much bigger. Military Commander Pat couldn't sleep. She sat in her private office on Coalition Station 6, surrounded by holographic displays showing the human ships. The more she studied them, the more impossible they seemed. Her computer had been running calculations all night, and the results made no sense. "Display file Ancient Records 647, she commanded. The computer brought up images of ruins found across Coalition space. She had looked at these pictures 1,000 times before, but now they meant something completely different. The strange metal doorways that never age, the perfectly preserved buildings that nothing could damage. They were all human technology. A quiet beep announced the arrival of Intelligence Officer Marcus. He looked tired, his uniform wrinkled from too many hours at his desk. "Commander, you need to see this," he said, placing a data crystal on her desk. "We found something in the deep archives." The crystal contained records so old they had been written by the first Coalition explorers. Pat watched as ancient images filled her screen. They showed massive ships, much like the ones currently surrounding the station, helping evacuate entire populations from dying worlds. The dates on the records went back thousands of years. "They were never gone," Marcus said quietly. "They were always here, watching, helping. We just didn't know it was them." Before Pat could respond, her emergency communicator buzzed. "Commander," a nervous voice said, "we're detecting unusual activity from the human ships. They're growing." Pat rushed to the observation deck. The sight took her breath away. The human vessels were indeed changing. Massive sections were unfolding like flowers opening to the sun. What had looked like solid hull plates were revealing vast gardens, forests, and what appeared to be entire ecosystems. "They're not just ships," Marcus whispered beside her. "They're arcs." A new message came from the Thunder's Edge. "Sorry for the display," Captain James said, sounding almost sheepish. "But some of our resident species needed sunlight. We try to give them natural cycles when possible." Pat watched as birds, actual birds, flew between the ships in controlled atmosphere bubbles. She saw trees larger than Coalition buildings stretching toward the stars. Each human vessel was a self-contained world. The Coalition's emergency channels were going crazy. Some colonies were calling for immediate surrender. Others wanted to attack while the ships were vulnerable. A few were already preparing evacuation plans. Nobody seemed to know what to do about a civilization so advanced it could carry entire ecosystems through space. "Commander," Marcus said, pointing to his tablet, "look at these power readings. The energy required to maintain those habitats. It's more than our entire Coalition uses in a year, and they're doing it with just waste power from their engines." Pat felt a strange calm settle over her. The fear of the past day was giving way to something else. Wonder. These humans hadn't come to conquer. If they wanted to, they could have done it millennia ago. They had come to finally say hello. Her communicator buzzed again. Ambassador Reed's voice came through, sounding excited. "Commander Captain James has offered to give us a tour of the Thunder's Edge. He says we can bring scientists." "And children." "Children?" Pat asked, surprised. "He says the ship's gardens are popular with kids. They have something called a petting zoo aboard." Reed paused. "Commander, I think we've been looking at this all wrong. We've been preparing for war when we should have been preparing for school." Pat looked out at the massive vessels again. The fear she had felt when they first appeared seemed silly now. These weren't weapons of war. They were libraries, schools, hospitals, and nature preserves all rolled into one. The humans hadn't built them to conquer the galaxy, but to help nurture it. Tell the captain we accept, she said. And Marcus, cancel the evacuation plans. Instead, start making lists of everything we can learn from them. She smiled. It's time for the coalition to go back to school. Outside, the human ships continued their stunning display, their gardens reaching toward the stars like hope made real. The coalition's greatest crisis had just become its greatest opportunity. Captain James walked through the gleaming corridors of the Thunder's Edge, making his evening rounds. The massive view screens along the walls showed the coalition stations surrounded by stars. His crew worked quietly at their stations, monitoring the thousands of systems that kept their floating city running smoothly. He stopped at the ship's main garden level, where Engineer Mike was tending to the ancient oak trees. These trees had been growing here for over 300 years, their roots stretching deep into specially designed soil chambers. Birds nested in their branches, and small animals scurried through the underbrush. "How are they handling the excitement?" James asked, touching one tree's rough bark. Mike smiled, checking readings on his tablet. "Trees don't care much for politics, Captain. Though the birds seem interested in our new neighbors, they keep flying to the windows to look at the coalition station." James nodded, remembering similar first contact situations from his long career. Humanity had watched the coalition grow from its early days, secretly helping when needed but always staying hidden. Now, after thousands of years of waiting, they were finally showing themselves. His communicator buzzed. "Captain," his first officer reported, "the coalition representatives are ready for their tour. They've brought 20 people, including their scientists and 3 children, as we suggested." "Perfect," James replied. "Have them brought to Garden Level 1. Let's show them the heart of our ship first." As he waited for the guests to arrive, James thought about humanity's long journey to this moment. Their own world had nearly died once, long ago. They had learned the hard way about the importance of preserving life, of carrying seeds and species with them as they reached for the stars. Every human ship was now a piece of Earth, carrying its legacy through space. The coalition group arrived, led by Ambassador Reed. The crystalline being stopped in amazement at the sight of the massive garden chamber. The 3 coalition children, wearing environmental suits adapted to their different species, pressed their faces against the safety field separating the entrance from the Earth-normal atmosphere within. "Welcome to the Thunder's Edge," James said warmly. "This is just one of our 100 garden levels. We carry specimens of over 50,000 Earth species aboard, plus another 20,000 from other worlds we've encountered." Military Commander Pat was scanning everything with her devices. "The energy readings are incredible," she said. "Just this room uses more power than our largest city." "Clean power," James explained. "Our fusion cores produce no waste. We learned long ago that true advancement means living in harmony with nature, not against it." He gestured to the trees. "These are descendants of trees that grew on Earth when humanity first reached the stars. We carry them with us as a reminder of where we came from and what we almost lost." One of the coalition children pointed excitedly at a butterfly landing on a nearby flower. The child's parent tried to pull them back, but James waved them forward. "It's okay," he said. "The safety fields will adjust to allow safe interaction. Would you like to see something really special?" He led them deeper into the garden, to a special enclosure where small, furry earth animals called rabbits lived. The children's eyes grew wide at the sight. Even the adult coalition members seemed fascinated by the peaceful creatures. "Our ships may look like warships," James said, watching the children's joy, "but their true purpose is preservation. We carry libraries of knowledge, seeds of countless plants, and specimens of thousands of species. We build them large not to intimidate, but to nurture." Ambassador Reed's crystalline form caught the light from the artificial sun above. "You've been protecting life throughout the galaxy all this time," he said. "Those ruins we found, they weren't military bases at all, were they?" James smiled. "No, they were nurseries. Places where we helped young civilizations take their first steps. Places where we kept watch, making sure life continued to grow." He looked at the coalition group. And now, we think it's time to share what we've learned, if you're willing to learn. The children had already made their decision, laughing as they watched the rabbits hop around their enclosure. The adults exchanged glances, centuries of fear and suspicion melting away in the peace of the garden. Here, surrounded by life from across the galaxy, war seemed very far away indeed. The discovery changed everything. Deep in the archives of Colony World 3, Dr. Stone held the ancient data crystal in his trembling hands. The crystal was older than the Coalition itself, but the human technology aboard the Thunder's Edge had brought it back to life. The holographic images it contained were playing in front of him, showing scenes from thousands of years ago. He watched as massive ships, exactly like the ones now orbiting their worlds, descended from the sky. A terrible disease had been killing his species back then. The crystal showed his ancestors dying by the millions. Then the humans came, bringing medicine and hope. They saved his entire species, then quietly disappeared into the stars, leaving only mysteries behind. Why didn't they stay? He asked the empty archive room. Why help us and leave? Because you needed to find your own way, a voice answered. Dr. Stone turned to see Captain James standing in the doorway. The human captain had been touring the colony's research facilities. Every species does. We learned that lesson long ago. The crystal showed more images. Similar scenes played out on other worlds, the other coalition species facing their own disasters. Each time, human ships appeared, helped, and vanished again. They had been guardian angels all along, watching from the shadows. The ruins we found, Dr. Stone said slowly, the ones we couldn't explain. The medical facilities that seemed too advanced. The rescue stations built to hold millions. He looked at James. They were all yours. James nodded. We call it the Watchman Protocol. Find those in need, help them survive, let them grow on their own. We've been doing it for thousands of years. News of the discovery spread across Coalition space like wildfire. In every colony, people began finding more evidence of humanity's hidden hand in their history. The mysterious ships that had saved refugees from a dying world 500 years ago, human vessels. The sudden cure for a plague that had threatened to wipe out another species, human medicine. On Coalition Station 6, Military Commander Pat reviewed the new information with growing amazement. Every piece of ancient technology they had found, every mysterious rescue mission in their history, all pointed to the same conclusion. Humanity had been their silent guardians all along. The fear of the human ships vanished almost overnight. Now, Coalition citizens gathered at observation points to watch the massive vessels in wonder. Children made up songs about the guardian angels who carried forests among the stars. Scientists eagerly shared their findings, discovering that many of their new inventions were rediscoveries of old human technology. Ambassador Reed stood in the Thunder's Edge's main conference room, surrounded by holograms showing the shared history of humans and coalition species. You could have conquered us at any time, he said to James. Why choose to help instead? James walked to a window, looking out at the coalition station. Because that's not who we are, he said simply. We learned the hard way that power means nothing without compassion. Our own world almost died once, consumed by war and greed. We swore never to let that happen to others. He touched a control, and new holograms appeared. Thousands of human ships spreading across the galaxy. Every ship carries libraries of knowledge, seeds of life, and the tools to preserve civilization. We're not conquerors. We're gardeners, tending to the galaxy's growth. Dr. Stone joined them, carrying more translated records. According to these files, humanity helped establish the very first meetings between our species. You guided us toward forming the coalition. We gave you a little push, James admitted, but you did the hard work yourselves. 5 species, choosing to work together in peace. That's why we decided it was finally time to reveal ourselves. You've grown into exactly what we hoped you would become. Outside the ship's windows, more coalition vessels were arriving. Not in fear or anger now, but in celebration. The mysterious guardians of their past had finally stepped into the light. As Dr. Stone watched, he saw coalition ships flying in formation with human vessels, their crews learning from each other at last. The age of secrets was over. The age of open friendship had begun. The medical bay of the Thunder's Edge hummed with activity. Coalition doctors watched in amazement as human physicians demonstrated their advanced healing technologies. What the Coalition considered incurable diseases, the humans treated as minor inconveniences. Their medical knowledge spanned thousands of years and hundreds of species. Dr. Stone had brought his daughter to the medical bay. She had been born with a genetic condition that Coalition medicine couldn't fix. The human doctors examined her with gentle care, their advanced scanners showing things Coalition technology had never detected. "We can help her," the human doctor said kindly. "This condition is something we've treated many times before, in many species. The treatment will take only a few hours." Stone fought back tears as he watched the human medical team work. They used light and sound instead of surgery, their machines gently rebuilding his daughter's damaged genes. By the end of the day, she was running through the hospital wing, completely healed. In another part of the ship, Military Commander Pat was learning about the humans' defensive systems. The technology was centuries ahead of anything the Coalition had, but the humans were willing to share it all. Their only condition was that it be used for defense, never conquest. "Your shields," Pat said, studying the technical readouts. "They're not just energy barriers, are they?" "No," Engineer Mike explained. "They're living systems, almost like immune systems. They learn and adapt. That's why your weapons couldn't harm us. The shields recognized the attack pattern and adjusted instantly." Ambassador Reed spent his time in the ship's vast libraries. The humans had records of nearly every civilization they'd ever encountered, including ones that had vanished long before the Coalition formed. Their archives contained the collected knowledge of over 10,000 years of space exploration. "All of this," Reed said, gesturing at the endless data streams, "you're willing to share it with us." Captain James nodded. "Knowledge should be shared, not hoarded. We learned that lesson long ago. The only question is whether you're ready to learn from our mistakes as well as our successes." The humans showed them recordings of their own history, their wars, their near destruction of their home world, their difficult journey to the stars. They held nothing back, sharing their failures alongside their achievements. It was a powerful lesson in humility from the galaxy's most advanced civilization. In the ship's main garden, Coalition children played with human children, neither group caring about the vast technological gap between their civilizations. They chased butterflies, fed the rabbits, and climbed trees together. Their laughter echoed through the massive chamber, a sound that had been missing from human ships for far too long. "That's the real reason we decided to reveal ourselves," James told Reed as they watched the children play. "Our ships had become too quiet. We realized we were so focused on protecting life that we've forgotten to live it fully ourselves. We needed this as much as you did." The day ended with a feast in the ship's main hall. Human food was served alongside Coalition dishes. Stories were shared, friendships were formed, and the barriers between their civilizations began to crumble. As the celebration continued, Dr. Stone found a quiet moment to thank Captain James for healing his daughter. The human captain smiled warmly. "Today, we helped one child," James said. "Tomorrow, we can help millions. But more importantly, we can teach you to do the same." That's always been our goal, not to rule or control, but to lift others up until they can stand beside us as equals. Stone looked around the great hall. Coalition engineers were already making plans with their human counterparts to improve their worlds. Medical teams were organizing training programs. Children were teaching each other games from their respective cultures. The Thunder's Edge, once feared as a weapon of war, had become a bridge between civilizations. As the artificial sun set in the ship's massive gardens, the light caught Ambassador Reed's crystalline form, spreading rainbow colors across the hall like a promise of brighter days ahead. 1 month after the humans' arrival, Coalition Station, 6 looked very different. Human technology had helped upgrade the station's systems beyond anything its builders had imagined possible. The once cramped corridors now contained their own gardens, small copies of the vast ones aboard the Thunder's Edge. Coalition citizens walked alongside human visitors, sharing stories and ideas as if they had known each other for years. Military Commander Pat stood at her favorite observation window, watching Coalition crews learning to operate their first human-designed defense system. The new shield generator was smaller than a storage crate, but could protect the entire station better than all their old systems combined. Thinking deep thoughts, Commander, Captain James asked, joining her at the window. Just remembering how scared we were when we first saw your ships, she replied with a smile. Now look at us. My crew almost forgot what it was like before you arrived. James nodded, looking out at the mixed fleet of human and coalition ships performing joint exercises. The coalition vessels looked tiny next to the massive human ships, but they moved together in perfect harmony. Already, some coalition crew members had begun training programs to serve aboard human vessels. In the station's new medical center, Dr. Stone worked alongside human doctors, learning their advanced techniques. The genetic treatment that had saved his daughter was now being used to help thousands of others across coalition space. Diseases that had once been death sentences were becoming easily treatable conditions. Ambassador Reed's office had been transformed into a learning center. The walls displayed holographic images from Earth and other human worlds, teaching coalition citizens about their new allies' history and culture. Young coalition members spent hours there, soaking up knowledge that had been hidden from them for millennia. We're ready to begin the next phase, James told the gathered coalition leaders. With your permission, we'd like to establish permanent human outposts in coalition space, not as rulers or governors, but as partners and teachers. The council chamber erupted in excited discussion. A month ago, the idea of permanent human bases would have caused panic. Now, every coalition world was competing to host the first one. Engineer Mike led a team of coalition engineers through the Thunder's Edge's engine room, explaining the principles behind human faster-than-light travel. The coalition engineers took notes eagerly, already thinking of ways to combine human and coalition technology into something new. That's what we hoped for, James said, watching the engineers work together. Not just teaching you our ways, but learning from you as well. Every civilization has something unique to offer. In the station's main hall, they held a ceremony to mark the official alliance between humanity and the coalition. Children from both civilizations carried flags and symbols of their peoples. The human ships arranged themselves in a circle around the station, their gardens fully open to create a ring of life among the stars. Dr. Stone's daughter, now fully healed, presented Ambassador Reed with a gift, a small tree grown from a seed from the Thunder's Edge's garden. It would be planted in the center of the station's new park, a symbol of the growth and change that had come to their worlds. A month ago, we thought we were about to face our greatest crisis, Reed said in his speech. Instead, we found our greatest friends. The humans didn't come to conquer us. They came to complete us. As the ceremony ended, Captain James made one final announcement. The Thunder's Edge and her sister ships will remain here as long as needed, teaching and helping. But more importantly, we're opening our academy to coalition students. The next generation of ships like these will have mixed crews, human and coalition together. The celebration lasted well into the night. From the station's windows, they could see the human ships glowing like new stars against the darkness. But they were no longer mysterious or threatening. They were beacons of hope, bridges between civilizations, and promises of an even brighter future. The story that began with fear ended with friendship. The warships that appeared on the horizon had turned out to be exactly what the coalition needed, not conquerors or enemies, but mentors and friends who had watched over them since the beginning, waiting for the right moment to say hello.